the scourge, foreshortening. So this is the time when you often hear students scraping their chairs to get away from the foreshortening, when really they're missing one of the most beautiful opportunities. Because this is the point where you don't have to measure. This is the point where you measure with rhythm, which means don't measure at all. So we have a foreshortened pose here that's been over foreshortened by the camera's cyclopic lens. So we're going to find this shape using the mermaid's net. And so I'd want to keep in the realms of fantasy the whole time with ideas and thoughts. So the mermaid's net, sometimes called the envelope, basically the parameters of where all of these legs, arms, and hands all fit into. So I'm sort of fitting an elbow over here, another elbow over here. So I can fit within this big beanbag here somewhat. So I'm going to find the rib cage. So the rib cage is no longer an egg, so we can forget about that. Rib cage is here. I just want to find the center of it somewhere around there. And yeah, we're seeing more on this side than we see on that side. So I'm going to feel this shape. If you do a small head in foreshortening, it always looks wrong. So get a big head in there and feel that shape. And because this is foreshortened by the camera's lens, we want to really feel a bigger shape here. So feel those hips go right out, get that knee up high. Because the knee is in the 2D world, so really we should see no foreshortening with that leg that's coming up. So this is a really weird lens that's been used. It gives us great comic book effect. So nothing's wrong. Everything can be used for a reason, but you can see how small that foot is compared to that head. It's no way your human eye would ever see anything like that. But a comic book artist can. So whatever medium you're working with, everything's valid. So finding that hip go all the way around, find it here. And this is where the idea of comic books really helps. So I'm going to feel the bottom of the rib cage where the 9th, 10th rib is. Looks almost so shallow as not to even appear at all. Feel these breasts as one shape and feeling that accordion. So we have the pinch on this side and the stretch on this side. So we have the accordion as that shape, so it's wider here. And the hips, rib cage, and breasts. And look at how different that whole shape is. So it's one shape, it encompasses both, and then you know how to place. And we can see the tilt going in this direction. So we find that weight coming this way. If you want to place the arm and hand, just go to the place where the hand's going to be. Draw in the hand. Remember, it's half to the knuckles, half to the longest finger. And it's a big hand because we're very close to it. So it feels like this. Throw the elbow out and come in for the shoulder. So we want to feel that shoulder coming at us and the arm pulling right out there. So we have this and go straight over to the other shoulder and we don't see it. And so we pull the arm out from there and we can pull that arm through and out. And it's going outside the mermaid's net, whatever feels right. That feels right to me. So the mermaid's net is just a parameter that you can go in and out of. Don't try and stay within it if it doesn't feel right. And there's that point where the sartorius from the other side gives us that curve that we saw in the other drawing and pushed onto the malleolus of that leg. And you can see that I've completely changed that around. Big, beautiful calf right there. And there's the biceps femoris tendon. Push it in, coming out for that great trochanter, giving us this box shape here coming in and high hip from underneath. We're seeing the high hip now from a different view altogether. And we haven't talked about this before. This is the tensor fascia latte.
No, it's not a coffee drink.
And there's a great mnemonic for that. Think of it as a pocket. Put your hand in the pocket, it's exactly that place. So really feeling the push of this hip coming up high. And you can see the magnus adductors here. Look how they compress with gravity. So gravity is something we want to take into consideration as well. So gravity reshapes muscles. So the pressure of the compression there, this breast coming up. We got a bit of a tangent here. So I'm going to push these hips back a little so we have room for that breast to move. And that all feels better. And you can see here's proof positive that the nipples are below the center line because here they're almost on it from this view. I think the more rounded you make the breast, the weirder they look. So try and vary those shapes. Now with the foreshortened face, just keep it simple. There's the eyebrows. Come in for the eye and the nose. And that's all you really need to do. Little muzzle for the mouth. Push out for the chin. Now the ear comes in. And you see after you've done a couple of drawings, even the most difficult ones go in quite easy. You want to do your better drawings in the last part of the day so it feels fresh. You're being so fresh at the end of the day because you've been through it, you've used your internal art engine. Haven't talked about that. So your internal art engine is basically the engine you've built from all of your mileage, all the drawings you've done. And so you end up with an external art engine on show. So it looks like magic. You're just building from that engine, which is really at the end of this day has been filled with the fuel of all of these drawings that you've done. It's really amazing how that affects the rest of your drawings. So that alone right there is enough to say, okay, we've learned a lot about foreshortening. The idea of the head being much bigger is definitely something you should keep in consideration. There's the epicondyle. Make sure your bones are hard. And there's the brachioradialis pushing out to give us that bow shape. And the more you draw those muscles, the more they show. This is called an olecranon. It's with a little cap on the elbow. And don't make it too round like I just did there, even though it is a cap. See if you can just square that off a little bit. So you can see here again, there's the medial epicondyle. So you got the lateral here. Lateral means outside, medial means toward the middle. And there's our, once again, our olecranon. You can comic book that and make it so obvious that it's a bone, but I tend to knock that back because it's the nuts and bolts. Remember, the nuts and bolts we hide. So there's the eye going in, and so the hairline follows this. So you're thinking of this like a canister that's just doing this, and everything fits around it. Eyes, nose, mouth. The only thing that comes off a little bit is the eyebrow. That comes up higher. But it's so little from this point, you'd hardly notice it. So let's say she is a mermaid, and her hair is spilling out like this along the beach, running through her fingers. You know, it's a beautiful image. And that's a really great start for an oil painting or a drawing. You've worked out all your foreshortening, all the beauty of it, and it's really dramatic. And let's see that foot. Feel that calcaneus. Don't be afraid to do a big calcaneus. Remember, it comes quite fast back in the malleolus, which is the ankle bone. I'm not going to put that foot in. It looks too weird. This is enough. You can change things around as much as you like. You're in complete control. So allow yourself to be the boss. And here, one last thing is it's the handlebar shape right there of the clavicles, where your neck fits in. Down a little lower from that, a little bit of pentimento. So pentimento is really, the idea of it is that it's animation. It shows the artist's mind at work, shows what they thought and what they changed. So there's a nice little moment there. So we've seen how it all works, and then the navel fits in right here. And we have the abs. Remember, they have their own block-off system, so they come down like this, and from this angle, they're headed in toward the pubic bone, like that. And from this angle, the iliac crest looks like this, rather than going up the opposite way, the high-waisted swimsuit. So we're seeing that shape, because it's a very thick bone. So from the side, let's say we have the gluteus doing this, the crest of the hip doing that, the leg doing this, biceps femoris doing that, the calf like this, and that's the foot. Let's say we have all of that on show, and there's the knees. What's happening here is the hip crest does that around to the back, but it's actually a bone that's shaped like this. So we're seeing the top of it from around the other side. That's all that's happening there. It's as simple as that. And the tensor fasciae latae that looks like a pocket is that shape there. But it also bends. If you pull your leg out like this, it actually comes around with it and bends. If you ever see that shape, that's what that is. So it's a big player, rarely talked about. Reshape this for the trochanter. And then we have a lovely little moment to foreshorten from. So foreshortens are my favorite way to draw because you get so much rhythm in it. It's really wonderful. Okay, so I could come in here now and I could do this, start to feel the flesh, especially on the breasts here. Got some shadows on the inside and in here. Don't have all the time in the world to do this. I'm just going to put in enough, maybe finish a little bit of the drawing. I like how that shadow is falling across here. Drop shadows are terrific because they show you the shape of the form that dropped it and the shape of the form that it's fallen on. So it's falling across those lower abs and across that thigh, giving us this wonderful shadow, this drop shadow, coming up for the hips. And it gives me a chance to put these magnus adductors in. Magnus adductors getting compressed there. And I'm overdoing it because I love them. Hard for the bones. Patella, coming down and feeling that little torpedo point there, which is the medius, the vastus medialis. On the other side, we've got the biceps femoris showing from around the back. Really massive muscle mass that shows all the way to the front. Coming down to the great trochanter and getting that box shape. Always get as boxy as you can on the hips. And like I say, remember, high hips, we're seeing it from this angle, so it's coming up high this way. Tensor fasciae latae is a little bit too weird to really delineate, so treat it smoothly, but put it in, and it will show that you really know what you're doing. But don't do it to the point where it looks like ego. Overdoing that magnus a little bit. So I have a saying, and I teach animation, and it's push it till it breaks. And so the minute it breaks, then pull back. But at least you got the maximum out of it, because you can always come back from it. So there's no loss. So push it until it breaks. Push it real good. And sure enough, because we've been working with gestural structure, things are a little wobbly. But if you look, like I said, the works of Egon Shelley, nobody would ever say that was broken. They'd just say that's just beautiful. It's an artist's vision, how they saw it, how they felt it. And I know that sounds a little bit arty, but it is true. You know, the best artists indulge themselves. So this is how I do it. Take it or leave it. And that's how you find your audience. You please yourself and your audience will find you. Never chase an audience is my advice. When you do it for yourself, they'll find you. So just finding this breast here. Utmost curve is on the outside. And then the most flattened side is in the inside. But here, because of compression and weight coming this way, slightly different shape. So just find it, just those soft. This is the broad end of the pencil here. Just finding that circular move. Use your fingers at that point. You don't want this to have a hard edge. Remember, bring back everything we've learned today. You want to learn to love the pencil. Love the pencil. Underneath, we can see the scapula coming up. That's why we have that hard edge. And then we have in here the little muscle with the big name, the coracobrachialis, separating the long head of the tricep from the bicep at the front. And basically where the hair under the arm would be is where you see that little divide. Just finding the nose and the eyebrow thicker on the inside and just wrapping upwards a little bit. And just the curve of the eyeball from above. Eyelash there, not too much. Don't make it cartoony. And just a little almond shape on the way out on each side. And just the corner of the nostrils here. You can just soften that for tone. One of the most complicated things. From upside down, don't be tempted to turn the page around so you can draw the head from another direction, because you'll lose the idea of learning to see. Don't be tricking yourself is the bottom line there. Don't be trying to fool your audience either. Remember, this is a conversation you're having. And if you wanted to do some armor, I always work it around the breasts as they are. Don't try and design it from the start and design it near the end to wrap around these shapes, because the shapes are more familiar to you now. And then you'll be more fluid. So you're always more fluid at the end of an artwork. That's the time to put your imaginary stuff on. There's all that complication of the kneeling point and the patella from a different view. You want to be careful not to make it too knobbly, because then you draw attention to it. Great trochanter again, that flatness that we get coming up to the sit bones. This is where it becomes almost a trap for young players, is that if you don't put this carpal pinch in, then the hand just looks like it's a wooden extension of another wooden pole. And the finger breaks into two parts. And draw the top part first, and then the underneath. And notice I'm putting these little lines to go up, telling the audience that that's before the knuckle. The knuckle comes afterwards. That's the time to be the most gestural. So on your index finger, the finger that points, that's the one I make the most gestural. Then you can come underneath to find the fingers after the fact. So there's practically drawing the impossible there. Hand and a face from upside down. Be fearless, young one. It's only a drawing. So kill the ego and do those which seem to be impossible. The worst you can do is just waste a piece of newsprint. And you know my idea that there is no mistake, there are no mistakes. It's just learning experiences. Just feeling that bicep curve down to the shoulder. So much more out of it. So I'm going to pull that hair across the arm, for instance. Feel it spill and tumble. So she could be a witch. She could be a mermaid. So let that hair pull out like Tetris. That malleolus pop a little. The tarsal mass pushed on. So when you get a foreshortened foot like that, you really got to make a little bit more of it. It just looks like a stump. Not too keen on coarse shadows. They look a little 3D. A little bit too much light on them. Almost like being shot in a studio, which is the case here. So I want to take it a little bit more outdoorsy. You get less of that. I don't want to get close into the photography. I'd rather be a little blind to it. And that'll help me with the massing. See a little bit of the tendon here, the pectoralis, which is nice. Okay, so you can play with this art pencil. I call it an art pencil. It's just a general soft. You really manipulate it until you really feel like you're going to commit. Really feel the curve of that frontalis, even underneath the hair. The pentimento makes everything beautiful. 1, 2, 3 goes at it. That hair go through the fingers there. Then you can put some bracelets on there if you want. You put a bracelet on here, it's coming back. Using that idea of the contour again. A little bit of mass in here in the shadows for some mystery. So you don't have to draw everything that you started with. Once again, you know what that is. I'll write it there and let you say it. So 7th and 8th ribs we see here. We don't see the 9th and 10th, but you can see the curve just here where the ribs divide. So I'll just put them in because they make a big impact about here, like that. So you can see here that I draw like I paint. I'll put down strokes, move them around, blend them. So charcoal, for me, it's dry oils. So there we go. We have a nice wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey idea of gestural structure, meaning that everything is not going to be too solid, but there lies the beauty of that. If you want to solidify it, then go to the curves. And when they're too curved, put a straight on them. And the best place to put a straight is on the most curved part. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it really does make a big difference. If you look at the works of Jack Kirby, for instance, that's where you'll see why that is so powerful an idea. It's the opposite of what you'd expect, and then it shows the mark of a master. Just want to get that eyebrow in. So beautiful. And the eyelash. You know, I always say kill the ego. On this occasion, just allow yourself a little bit of ego in there. So art is not like anything else. It can be a contradiction, but we did most of this without ego. So we can put a little bit of flash in there. Basically, people want it to look like it was easy, and that's a little bit different from the nuts and bolts ego. You usually see the first rib up here is quite straight, and that's where you see the rib on the upper rib cage. If you see lots of little puckers down here, I'm not too keen on them, but you might like them. You know, it can show a little bit of rhythm. It might be missing if you need it. So that's the idea of style. You use the anatomy. That's why I wrote the book, The Anatomy of Style. Use your knowledge of anatomy to be stylistic. You can choose what to leave out, what to put in, where to put a hard edge, where there's a soft edge. Change it around. As long as everything reads true, then everyone is gonna applaud your decisions. Yeah! Don't be afraid to go outside the lines either. If you ever developed that idea, keeping the lines, you weren't really an artist, because that's a weird idea. Okay, so the clock is ticking for me, so I'm gonna just call it. But I could render this now for another 2 hours and end up with a really lovely foreshortened figure. So I've done a wonderful course that you'll find on the Proko web store called How to Draw Fantasy Female Figures. And you'll see some terrific foreshortening in there. So go check that out and you'll see what a render on top of this would look like. And we'll talk about backstory and all the wonderful stuff you need to know to put emotion into your work. Remember, this isn't just about nuts and bolts. This is about expressing yourself as an artist. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. You guys can imagine what it'd be like to finish that. Or better still, draw this and finish it yourself. The Proko summer sale is happening right now. You can get 20% off all Proko courses, tools, and ebooks using the code SUMMERSALE. If you want to learn how to draw fantasy female figures from imagination, check out my new course at proko.com/Patrick Jones. My Power of Osmosis course is designed to help you draw fully rendered figures with a narrative depth. My approach will give you the confidence to create dynamic characters from imagination. See for yourself at proko.com/Patrick Jones.